In on the ongoing negotiations is Senator John Hoeven of North Dakota. Senator, thanks for joining us. And let me ask you, would you vote yes or no on this proposal we're hearing right now?
Well, Melissa, I've got to see it, but I think we need to get something done. And we're working on it on two fronts, both the House bill, which I am very supportive of them bringing a bill forward, and we're negotiating in the Senate as well.
But let me ask you,
yes,
what do you think of their
much want to
details, though? What do you think of their details? They want to, I mean, it's basically, it's clean all the way through, as they would say, you know, funding the government through December 15th, taking the debt ceiling to February 7th, and it just has that VITR language in there. Would you support that specifically?
Yes, and we in the Senate are working very hard to get them to advance the bill to us. We are actively working with our House counterparts to get them to pass that bill and move it over to the Senate so we can go to work on it.
I mean, some of the gossip behind the scenes is that this is a move to sort of dump it in your lap. It sounds like you welcome that. Would it be sticking it to Democrats at all, that they would then be faced with, you can accept this as it is if you're willing to let your aides go into Obamacare on the exchanges?
We need to get this done. We need to get the government open, and we need to address the debt ceiling. So the House needs to bring this bill forward. We're actively working with them to support them and get them to do it. It'll come over to the Senate. We're going to try to get the best bill we can through the Senate. It may get changed some, go back to the House, but I think this is how we get a deal done. So we're working both fronts, working with the House and then trying to reach across the aisle here in the Senate to get something done. One other point I want to make, I think one of the keys is that we make sure we focus on reforms and savings in the process as part of addressing the debt ceiling.
Well, what does that mean? I mean, because a lot of folks are wondering if we just push off the deadline, whether it's December 15th or February 7th, we are in essence just setting up for another deadline and the same thing we've just gone through.
That's my biggest concern, Melissa, and that's why, you know, in the Senate version, we have a process for a conference committee of the respective budget committees, because we've got to come up with savings and reforms to address the underlying problems of our debt and deficit, and that's our mandatory spending programs.
And so what do you think realistically could be done on that front? I mean, what would you insist on? What would you hold out for?
What I would like is something built right into the bill, like we did with the Budget Control Act, where we require that these committees come forward with solutions, and if they don't, you have an effective reform or savings that automatically is part of the legislation. Now, I don't know if we can get that. That's something I've been pushing for. But short of that, we have to have a process that is as strong as possible and a short enough timeline on the debt ceiling agreement to make sure that we get it done.
I'm sure you heard just moments ago Fitch putting the U.S.'s credit on negative watch. Does that put more pressure on you?
Well, I think look, yes, we need to get a deal done. So yes, it does. But again, that goes not just to getting the deal done, if you will, but to getting the kind of reforms and savings that we're talking about.
Well, I don't know. It doesn't necessarily address that, because what it really talks about is not paying your bills in a few days and whether or not the Treasury Secretary would go ahead and make bond payments or not. I mean, in that sense, is it frustrating if the money is there to make the bond payments and you have somebody like Fitch or any of the other credit rating agencies coming out and saying that they're going to have to downgrade the U.S. because they're afraid you're not going to make that payment? I mean, is it in essence a different issue?
Melissa, I think it's actually two things. I think first, it is about getting a deal done, so we make sure that there's no default or any question there whatsoever. But then beyond that, I think it's making sure that we address the underlying drivers of our deficit and our debt.
Senator, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate your time and good luck to you.
Thanks, Melissa.
The deadlock in D.C. caused